Well, the verdict is in the Chad Daybell trial, and it is guilty on all counts. Well, today we're going to discuss some of the highlights of the trial, and we're going to tell you a whole lot more about what's happening with the Chad Daybell jury now in the sentencing phase. This and more on this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. Yep, it's what some people are calling the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individuals interviewed and participating in this show and do not represent those of Charlie Crimebuster nor Peacemaker Network. All individuals described or mentioned in the podcast should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This podcast contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to another edition of Charlie Crimebuster. Boy, what a week this has been. The verdict is in. After around 6 hours of deliberating, this jury comes back with guilty on all counts. And now the jury is going to be, they're setting to hear about the sentencing phase of this particular case. But I wanted to go back in this particular episode and talk about some of the highlights of the trial, and we're going to do that in just a moment. But first, let me take a moment to welcome you to the podcast. We appreciate our listeners, and we welcome you aboard the Charlie Crime train. We'd love for you to reach out with a shout-out. You can reach me, Charlie Crimebuster, at gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. You can ask questions. You can make suggestions. You can even lodge objections. It's always a safe space. Again, reach out to me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the program, go on over there to peacemakernetwork.com, peacemakernetwork.com. You can become a badge, BADGE supporter. You can not only support the podcast, but you'll also be helping support those brave men and women who run toward danger rather than away from danger. Go on over to peacemakernetwork.com, read all about that. And, of course, if you'd like to get caught up on all the episodes we have, and we have a ton of episodes about this case, then go on over to charliecrimebuster.com. You'll find not only this case, but a bunch of other true crime cases for your listening pleasure. Now, I want to take also a moment to tell you about something that I'm really excited about. We launched about 45 days ago, we launched our YouTube channel. And I have just been amazed at the success of that channel. We'd love for you to check us out there. Go to YouTube and then just go to the tag at Charlie Crimebuster and you'll find us there. And we would love for you to subscribe and become a part of a real growing group of people that have subscribed already to the YouTube channel. Again, YouTube, tag it at Charlie Crimebuster. Love for you to be a part of that as well. All right, today we're going to be talking about the highlights of this trial. So many things have happened in this 6 weeks or so that this trial has been continuing. And it continues now in the sentencing phase. But there are some things that I call gotcha moments. Those moments that stand out from all the other moments. We're going to share in today's episode some of those gotcha moments. One of the gotcha moments I'd like to share with you is something that happened, actually on cross-examination and through rebuttal witnesses. Now, the defense, for the most part, all through the trial, I had a lot of respect for the defense attorney, John Pryor. I think he did an outstanding job because he didn't have a whole lot to work with because there was a ton of evidence against his client. We could see very clearly, I think, in the trial that Pryor was going to use the children. When I say children, I'm talking about Chad's adult children, that they were his best shot at trying to convince the jury that his wife had not been killed, but rather died of natural causes. And so he brings in these children, and you could tell that everybody in the court, from the prosecution to the jury to spectators, had a lot of respect for these grown children. They were going through a whole lot. Their mother had been taken away from them. They found that their father, who had been recognized in the community as an outstanding, godly man, that he was involved in a torrid affair And that affair even had linked to it the deaths of other children. So can you imagine what these children were going through? And so Pryor brings these children to the stand. And they do support their father. You can tell that. And I don't know whether this is something that they just totally lied about, or whether it was something that they had convinced themselves that was the truth that was not really the truth. An example is, Elma, she was talking about the fact that her mother was getting tired these days and that she wasn't this energetic person that all these other witnesses had testified to. Said she would come home at night and go to bed right before or after supper, after dinner, early, 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, maybe there was a time or two when Tammy was tired. There's a time or two when I've been tired and going to bed early. I bet you too have as well, right? So I believe in her mind that she justified what she was saying because there was a time that Tammy was tired. She also said that Tammy would bruise easily. You know, that those bruises that the medical examiner had testified about in trial, that could have come about because of her carrying books, or her hip would just hit a cabinet or side of a desk and bruise easily. So there was probably a time when she noticed that her mom had bruised in another way other than being killed, as the medical examiner alluded to in his testimony. So I believe in her mind she had conjured up all these things. Now, in the same way, the son Garth came to the stand and he testified in the same way. But this was a highlight of the defense. If the defense had any chance at all, it was believing these adult children. Well, we all know now that the jury did not believe the children, nor did I, and nor did 95% of a 5,000-member poll that was taken that had heard the testimonies of the kids. But this was the best shot that the defense had, in my opinion. But the gotcha moment. The gotcha moment was when the defense had brought this before the jury, and then the prosecution brought rebuttal witnesses in. One rebuttal witness came and talked about her own relationship with Emma. Of course, before then, that witness was asked about Tammy's health. And this witness reported that she was very healthy, very vibrant, very energetic, the opposite of what the children had said, and what witness after witness after witness had said for the prosecution, that Tammy was not this weak person that died naturally. There's something else happened there. People don't die that young without a reason, unless it's homicide, of course. So this witness comes and says something that is a gotcha moment. Talks about the time that she heard Emma talking about her mother's death, and that her testimony was not quite backing up what she had told this person previously. She told this person previously that, she thought that her mom died of a blood clot to her lungs, and that the doctor thought so as well. Well, this was showing that Emma was very inconsistent about her mother's death. And if she was inconsistent about her mother's death, and if she had said one thing one time and another thing another time, then that could discount her testimony on stands. That was certainly a gotcha moment. In the same way, there was another person brought as a rebuttal witness, and this was a friend of Garth. This friend of Garth, McKay, his name was, he had worked beside Garth at the haunted house that they worked in. And while they were working there, of course, this terrible, tragic death of Tammy came to be. And sometime about a week afterwards, he was talking with Garth, and Garth told him that he came home at night, saw his mom, that she was pale, her lips were blue, but get this, he said, when I got home and saw that, my dad was nowhere around. Folks, that was huge. Because he had testified before this jury that he had come home at night, walked past his parents' bedroom, they were in there sleeping, he could hear his father snoring, only to be woke up in the morning, his father saying, hey, I need help, heard a thump, his father said, hey, I need help, and then he went there and he said that his dad said that she died in her sleep. Well, I'm telling you, this rebuttal witness that came before the jury threw that one right out the window. Note, he told this guy when he got home his father was not around. Now, where was his father? Doesn't take anybody very long to say in their mind that was probably the time he was driving his spiritual hitman, Alex Cox, back to his car that was parked 2.8 miles, or a little over 2 miles rather, from that residence. And get this, there was no other reason for the spiritual hitman, Alex Cox, to be there in that area other than to assist Chad in the death of Chad's wife, Tammy. This was a got you moment for sure. So one of the highlights, one of those got you moments, was when these children came to the stand, testified to support their father, only to have that testimony's platform knocked down by rebuttal witnesses. Hey, there are more highlights coming along. But, in our podcast, we always take the time to lighten the load a little bit. And we'd like to do that today by sharing with you what we call our crazy crook story. So here, my friend, is Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Well, our crazy crook today comes from the state of Maine, and his name was Kevin Gray. It seems that Kevin had ordered a ride share to a local TJ Maxx store. But then, this idiot, he blabbed to the driver how he was going to rob the place. Well, as you can guess what happened next. The driver dropped him off and promptly called the cops. Now, the police identified the passenger as Gray, in addition to being a suspect in a crime committed also the previous day. They found that they had other warrants out for him. Now, when they saw him, cops, when they saw him exit the TJ Maxx, they approached him, and sure enough, there was a foot chase. But my friend, you really can't outrun the popo. They caught him. He was arrested. Well, they set pre-conviction bail conditions and barred him from several businesses in the area. Well, can you guess which business it was? One of them was a TJ Maxx store. So, my friend, this crazy crook who decided to take a ride share to commit a crime, but was even crazier than that in that he blabbed to the driver that he was going to rob the store. This guy, by the name of Gray in Maine, is indeed Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Well, now back to our main focus. The next highlight of the case as I saw it was what I call the battle of the experts. As you know, in most all trials, each side will bring experts to support their theory of the crime or bringing doubt to the case, one or the other. But they all bring their experts in. Now, at the very beginning, when Tammy Bell had died, there was a very inexperienced coroner who had not covered a lot of deaths like this, and they immediately kind of rushed their judgment to say that this was natural causes. So then, in light of all the other details surrounding this terrible, terrible crime spree, well, the police were able to get the body exhumed, and then they were able to do an autopsy. And to do that autopsy, there was a medical examiner who was called by the prosecution. And when you look at the experts that Pryor brought on and compare them to the experts that the prosecution brought on, you can see that there's a large, large gap. Now, the experts that the defense brought on, I thought they were very good. They did a very good job. They were very professional. They handled themselves on the stand. They were able to handle themselves well with confidence and assurance. And I think they did a good job. The problem is they did not have the facts to back up the defense side of the story. And the one examiner who was the one that was pinned against the expert from the prosecution she was limited in the documents that she actually observed in her own research about the death. She did not even, now get this, she did not even access Tammy's medical history. Why would you bring an expert to the stand that would not look at the medical history of that person? On the contrary, the prosecution, this guy, he was extremely good. He looked at all of the details. He looked at all the reports. He studied the medical history. He had all of the right answers. And in my opinion, when he got up to the stand and when he told how he went about this autopsy, how he went about this consideration, this review, and this determination that this was a homicide, I was convinced beyond any reasonable doubt at all that Tammy Daybell was murdered. And it wasn't very hard for you to realize that more than likely what happened is the fact that she was smothered to death. And according to the medical examination, where the bruises were, someone was probably holding her down while the other person was smothering them. This was a huge blow to the defense, and it was a huge win for the prosecution. So I think one of the highlights of this case was what I call the battle of the experts. They also had experts, of course, in GPS locations and all that sort of thing. And when you got down to it, it was very easy to see that Chad had turned off his GPS settings. But here's another thing that was really crazy when you come to these experts. Now, the expert got up and said, no, I can't say that Chad's device was at the property. I can't say that when Alex was there and he was coming to bury little Tylee and burn her body, I cannot say that Chad's device was there. But oh, guess what? He didn't have to say it. You know why? Chad already said it. He said it when he contacted his wife, communicated to his wife that he was out on the property, that he shot a raccoon, he buried that raccoon, and then he burned some rubbish in the fire pit where little Tylee's body was burned. And this, my friend, was the very same day that Alex the hitman was there on the property burying Tylee Ryan. This was a got you moment for sure. Because even though the expert came and said Chad's device wasn't there, Chad already told people he was there, made up a story about shooting a raccoon and burning in the fire pit. Prior to that, he had researched southwest winds the day before. So you see where it's all coming together, my friend. This was another got you moment, and another time when I said in one of our podcasts that the gravedigger digs his own grave. So gotcha moment number 2, highlight number 2, I believe was the battle of the experts. And the prosecution's experts in this case, in this trial, far exceeded and succeeded in bringing the news to the jury that led them to a guilty plea on all charges. I think another gotcha moment in this trial was by far the text messages that was brought before this jury. Boy, what a job it must have been to follow up on all these text messages. Over 40,000 of them. About 40,000 is what I read that they were actually pouring through. But I think one of the gotcha moments was when it zeroed in on, text messages about the lives of these precious children. Because in the text messages, Lori would continually ask when and if JJ was at a 0 on Chad's scale. Now, when I say Chad's scale, we're talking about a death scale, that someone is to the point that they need to die in order to escape the demon that's in them. And by August 2019, Chad told Lori that he was. On August the 7th, she said to Chad, We are both so tired of taking care of the demons, talking about her and her cousin or her niece. We are weary. Please ask the Lord to take them. Did you hear that? We're so tired of taking care of the demons. We are weary. Please ask the Lord to take them. And the agent Hart said, of course, this referred to the children. Now, the messages also showed that Lori and Chad, well, they're having some problems before her move to Rexburg. She was frustrated and said that she was not a priority. And Chad, in his way to comfort her, would text her, get this, we are surrounded by telestial relatives that are simply obstacles. I'm sick of it. Did you hear that? People who are obstacles. I'm sick of it. Now, on October the 5th, 2019, Chad then texted Lori about Tammy. The message said that, well, the short version is that she switched. Tammy is in limbo, a level 3 demonic entity named Viola in her body. Not sure the timing for removal, but once her actions verify the differences, I don't want to wait. And then another text that came was this so-called blessing that Chad gave to Alex. Now remember, Alex is a spiritual hitman. And what stood out to the agent who testified about these text messages was the mention of how Alex's mission was to protect his sister Lori. And here's what that blessing said. You have already assisted us in ways you can never be repaid. You've already assisted us in the protection. So these text messages even got to the point that they were talking about where they were on the death spectrum, both Tylee and both little JJ and Tammy, that these people were ready to die, that it was time to eliminate them. I believe this was indeed a got you moment when these texts was actually presented to the jury. You know, I have often said in my covering of this terrible, terrible case that the gravedigger literally dug his own grave. And the reason I say gravedigger, we all know that Chad Daybell did two things. He wrote books and he dug graves. Well, he dug his own grave because his own words, I believe, is at the paramount of the evidence that convicted him of this horrible crime, of these 3 murders. It is what he said in the text. And that brings me to the next got you moment, which is probably one of the most important moments in the trial. I'm going to share with you that in just a moment, but we always take time in the podcast to share with you some news you can use. Our producer, James Buckland, does a wonderful job in giving us just a little short bite of news that we can use that can help us and others around us feel and be more safe. So we're going to get to the real got you moment, that I think really swayed this jury. We're going to get there in just a moment. But right now, here is James Buckland with news you can use.
After the child sex abuse scandal involving Penn State football coach Jerry Sandusky, Florida legislatures in 2012 passed a law that placed a greater responsibility on ordinary people to report known or suspected child abuse. Now, there may be specific mandates imposed by other states, but here in Florida, the Protection of Vulnerable Persons Act has made everyone a mandatory reporter who must call the state hotline or electronically report child abuse, including sexual abuse, when they know or reasonably suspect that it is occurring. The abuse hotline can be reached at 1-800-962-2873. That's 1-800-962-2873. The hotline operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Reports can also be made online. Either method of reporting allows most civilian reporters to make a report anonymously. People reporting abuse should be prepared to provide as many details as they can, including descriptions of the incident, information on who was involved, when and where it occurred, and information on the extent of any injuries sustained. Experts say that it's necessary to catch sexual abuse in the early stages. The warning signs often escalate from small unwanted advances to a more extreme crossing of boundaries. So it's important to take action early on by speaking to the perpetrator or reporting the abuse. Protect our children and our heritage. If you suspect child abuse, please report it immediately. Call 1-800-962-2873. That's 1-800-962-2873.
Thank you, James. Always on point. Well, there was a phone call. Actually, there were two phone calls that took place that I think are really got you moments that was introduced to this jury. One was a call between Chad and Lori while she was there in jail. As you know, these calls are recorded. So they thought that they would be cute and they would just talk in code. But boy, did they share a lot of information. They talked about the fact that there was an all-together plan. They called it a blueprint. They referred to it as like a building project. But we all know that this was their plan of action to get rid of all the obstacles in their life so that they could be together by themselves in Hawaii or wherever they were going to spend the rest of their lives together, without their children, without their spouses. They were already dead. So she's talking and she's saying, well, you know, the contractor assured us there would be no problems, but yet there's a problem. He said that he was 97% sure, 99% sure that there would be no problems, or maybe 3%. Maybe there's a 3% chance there'd be problems. She said that's not so. It's 99% problems. Well, we know what the problem was. They never really thought the cops would catch up to them to the point that they would put her in jail because they could not find the children. Now, at the point of this phone call, the bodies of the children had not been located, but she was in jail, and that was the problem. And she again talks about the contractor. Now, the weird thing about it was Chad said that he had talked to the contractor, meaning their spiritual hitman that was contracted to do the dirty work. Only problem, spiritual hitman, he was already dead. He had already died. Chad tells her, Lori, he's talking to the dead. And she believes it. But then she says, you got to assure me that everything's going to be okay. Well, I talked to the contractor. I talked to Chad. They called him something else. They had a code name for him. Ray, I believe it was. I talked to him. He said it's going to be all right. She said, I don't need to hear that from him. I need to hear it from you. Is it all right? Is it going to be okay? And Chad said, yes, you know. Well, how do you know it's going to be okay? Well, because I've seen the total plan. I know that this is God's plan for us. God's going to work it out for us. Yeah, sure. But I'm telling you, this was very, very incriminating, talking about the blueprint. And she even mentioned this. Now, get this. She mentioned, you know, you have these things happen. You know, you're putting a pool in the backyard and you're digging in the backyard and all of a sudden you have a problem. Cannot believe she said that. Because you know what happened? One day later, they knew that Alex Cox, their spiritual hitman, that phone pinged on Chad Daybell's property the day after the last time that anybody had seen Tylee Ryan. It pinged on the property right there near where they found her body. And now they're talking on the phone about a blueprint, about a project, about digging up the backyard for a swimming pool. Well, the agents, the very next day, they went to Chad's property. They had a search warrant in hand. They dug up that back property. Wasn't for a swimming pool. It's where they found the bodies. The body of Tylee Ryan, what was left of it, and the precious little body wrapped up in tape of little J.J. Vallow. This phone call was certainly a gotcha moment. Now, all during this call, stay with me here, all during this call, they were laughing and giggling like two junior highs in love. But then the next day, the police showed up on the scene. Then there was another call, another phone call. I want you to listen to the call. I'm going to play it for you, and you're going to see that they weren't giggling. They weren't laughing. You can feel the tension. You can feel the weight that has all heaped down upon Chad because he knows they're digging in the backyard. He knows they're going to find those bodies, and he knows that he is toast. This is a got you moment for sure. Here's the phone call.
Hey, babe.
Hello?
Are you okay?
No, they're searching the property.
now?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm at MS. Mark Means will be talking to you.
Okay. Well, are they in the house?
No, they're out on the property.
Are they seizing stuff? Again?
They're searching. There's a search warrant, and so the moment I just stood in was with the kids.
Okay.
Yeah, and I tried to set up a call. That's a call.
Yeah.
And we'll see what transpires.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't
What want me to do? Pray.
What?
What do you want me to
Yeah,
do?
pray. Pray. Yeah.
Okay. What can I do for you?
I'm feeling pretty calm. I called Mark, called Katie. And just talk with him.
Have you talked to him already?
I did call him, yes.
So he knows what they're doing?
Yeah. Expected. Call from somebody else I need to talk to about. I love you so much.
Okay, I love you. Should I try to call you later?
I don't know. I don't know. You can try, yeah. I'll answer if I can.
Okay.
Did you hear that? You can try. I will answer if I can. Yep. You can see the difference in these two phone calls. The night before, they were giggling, laughing about it. Boy, now they know they're caught. He knows what they're doing in that backyard. You can see it. You can sense it. You can feel it. You can feel it through this phone call that he knows that he's done for. You can try to call me. And you can see, and the other reference, of course, was to attorneys. We better get a hold of our attorneys. We are in a heap of trouble. Boy, that is certainly a gotcha moment. You can't tell me that both Lori and Chad knew that those children were buried in that backyard. Then to close it all up, I think the last gotcha moment was when they showed Chad in the back of the squad car and talking to his daughter, Elma, and telling her about money that he had transferred over so she could pay the mortgage, etc., etc., etc. He did that before he was arrested that morning because he knew what was coming down the pike. And then he said these words, I will not be back. I'll not be coming back. Why? He knew those children were there. He was a part of the conspiracy. And thank God the jury got it right. He's guilty. So this is Charlie Crimebuster, and these have been some highlights of the trial, some gotcha moments, if you please. Now they're in the sentencing phase. Will he get the death penalty? I'd like to hear what you have to say about that. Contact me, Charlie Crimebuster, at gmail.com. We're going to have links to all those places that we told you could go to. We're going to have them in the show notes. So you don't have to remember the links. You don't have to write them down. Just go to the show notes and you can click on it. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel. YouTube, tag at Charlie Crimebuster, and you'll see a lot more about this case. Till this time next time, Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert, for the life you save, it may be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. You can also support our first responders, military, and law enforcement communities at peacemakernetwork.com, or subscribe to our YouTube channel using tag @CharlieCrimebuster. Even visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/CharlieCrimebuster. Or if you would like to make suggestions for future podcasts, please send your ideas to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.